Have you ever felt like your music is starting to sound the same, or you just haven't been able to come up with anything new or exciting lately? In 1949, there was a psychologist named Donald Hebb who coined the phrase, "cells that fire together wire together." When we solve problems, which is a huge part of making music, our brain gets more and more efficient by strengthening the connections between different neurons, which is great because that means that there's less effort required to solve the problem the next time. But when we're trying to be creative, this efficiency can kind of work against us because we keep coming up with the same solutions, which means that everything ends up kind of sounding the same and possibly stale. The good news though is that we have the power to break out of this by encouraging our brain to draw new connections that will yield new solutions. In terms of music production, this means that we need to throw a wrench in the works by learning new things or changing our workflow in some way. And there's lots of different things that you can try. You could learn a new chord progression of something that you like. You could start with the drums if you never do. You could start with a sample if you never do that either. You could learn a new instrument, or maybe even just try to do some sound design and make some new patches for yourself and create some interesting sounds that you can use in your next beat or your next song. The idea here is that we challenge our brain to come up with something different than usual by doing something different than usual. Perfect is the enemy of good. There's a famous experiment about a pottery class that was split into two groups. The first group was to be graded on the quality of their best pot, while the second group would be graded on the number of pots created. At the end of the term, the group that was graded only on the quantity of the pots made much better pots than the group graded on the quality of their best pot. The reason is that the expectations that we place upon ourselves get in the way of our ability to actually reach the quality that we're after. They were so worried about avoiding imperfections that they completely stunted their own creativity. A big takeaway here is that when you sit down to make music, focus on the quantity and then the quality will follow. One practical piece of advice I heard one time that I want to pass on to you guys is plan to make a beat or a song that you don't plan to show anybody. You can get as crazy or as dumb with it as you want because it's for your ears only. The stakes are as low as they could possibly get. A lot of times you'll find though that you will make something cool because you just relieve that pressure that you put on yourself. Sometimes opening up your doc can feel like staring at a blank document. What should I write? What should I do? What should I make? There's so much possibility, which would seem like a good thing, but ironically, possibility can sometimes make us feel paralyzed. There's a famous study done in 2000 about this very issue. One day, shoppers at an upscale food market saw a display table with 24 different kinds of jam. On another day, the shoppers saw a similar table, except this time there were only 6 kinds of jam on display. The large display attracted more interest than the small one, but when the time came to purchase, people who saw the large display were only 1/10 as likely to buy as the people who saw the small display. The practical solution here is as ironic as the issue itself. We need to impose limitations on ourselves in order to enhance our creativity. What this does is reduce the fatigue of infinite possibility and forces our brain to come up with creative solutions to solve problems that we otherwise wouldn't have thought to do. You could do anything, like you could try to make an entire song out of one kick sample. Like every instrument has to use the kick as a basis. You could do something like only one instrument is allowed to play at the same time. Or how about like no VST instruments allowed, only real sounds can be recorded and used in your final beat. It doesn't matter too much what the limitation is as long as you impose it and then, work your way out of it creatively. What about when you don't even feel like sitting down to make music in the first place? What do you do then? I once read an article called The 5-Minute Rule, and it made a huge difference to me in getting me to sit down and start making music or even do other things that I just know I need to do. Essentially, you just make a deal with yourself where you say, I'm gonna work on this project for 5 measly minutes. That's all. And if at the end of the 5 minutes, I don't wanna do a lick more work, then I can feel free to close it. And guess what happens? 9 times out of 10, you keep on working. There's a study done in Austria that came out in 2012 about creativity, and the conclusion drawn was that people tend to be more creative when they're cognitively stimulated via the exposure to other people's ideas. So you can try just making some music with your homies, or you can watch some videos about music production, hopefully on the Thomann studio and recording channel. And of course, it's totally okay not to work on music for a while and just take a break, because sometimes your brain needs that as well. So I wanted to ask you guys, what do you struggle with as music producers? And I guess most importantly, what works for you? Because I think we should try to spread the love and help each other out, because the more art that's out there in the world, I think the better it is. Anyway, I hope you found these strategies inspiring and helpful and that you're able to make more music than ever. We'll see you guys on the next In the Beat.